This is like the old days, like 1960s TV or something, Levi, where we're just sitting around chatting.
Yeah, it's better than having spotlights from the police department in your face, isn't it?
Well, I can't speak for that. First of all, I want to say thank you all for coming here. This will be a fun 30 minutes or 35 minutes. We'll have Paul Lloyd appointed in front. If we go a little long, he can just hold up a 1 sign, meaning 1 minute left. We could talk about football all night long. We talk about sports all night long. But we're not going to talk about that as much as we're going to talk about things that may appeal to the students here and some of the parents, overcoming obstacles. I do want to start out with a funny story. When Jerry graduated from SMU, his last year was 1968, academic All-American, and, of course, athletic football All-American after the 68 season. So the 1969 draft comes up. And back then, it's not quite the televised extravaganza that it is now, but they did have something on television. So Jerry gets his family in Beaumont around the TV, black and white TV screen, and they come to the second round of the NFL draft. They said, with the second pick, the 40th pick overall in the NFL draft, Houston Oilers select Jerry LeVias, wide receiver, Southern Methodist. Now, at the time, the Oilers weren't very good, if you can imagine that, back in the late 60s. They weren't very good at all. They were to get a little bit better once they got him returning kicks and punts, but they made that announcement, Jerry's got his family in the room. And one of the uncles who might have had a few pops in the back of the room at the time said, well, there goes your NFL career. We say that somewhat in jest, but also, seriously, that did not mean the end of his NFL career. He played for a number more years, went on to San Diego. Jerry had a good NFL career, was one of the top rookies in 1969. And so what people say about you, what they project, including the dumb media like myself, nobody knows what's going to happen. That's why they play the games. And speaking of that, before we get rolling here with Jerry, congrats to Kinkaid on winning the season opener to Coach Hill Friday night over Anahuac. Huh? How about that? How about that? We got the Hrncirs here, the whole family. Trent, his brother down from Chicago, the former SMU tight end. Hrncirs are great. This is just a great night. And let's start off, Jerry. Let's talk about some stuff that kids are really interested in. Let's talk about education. When Jerry was recruited to SMU, most football coaches are going to tell you what kind of program they have and what kind of features on the campus and the activities. Hayden Fry, back in 1965, when there were no black football players in the Southwest Conference, the old Southwest Conference, came to Beaumont. Jerry was on his way maybe to UCLA or where else?
University of Washington.
Or maybe, Washington. So Hayden comes to Jerry and not talk about football. Jerry would have gone somewhere else. He wouldn't have even gone to SMU had it not been for one approach Hayden Fry had, and this was genius. Education.
The thing about Coach Fry, that he's a going guy, but he was also a person that respected your family and who wanted to make sure that the character came from a great family. But before I get into that, Coach Fry was next door talking to my grandmother. And my grandmother was the one that prayed for us for every game. And I was the smallest of all the grandchildren. So Coach Fry comes into the house and he passes me up and he passes my father. And he goes in the kitchen and he talks to my mother. And my mother's in the kitchen and she's cooking. And they're talking and everything. And I'm going, what are they talking about? He was talking to my mother about how to cook pinto beans without giving you gas. So what a coach. But then he finally gets to me and he says, you're a young man. You are 17, 18 years old. And if you're lucky enough to play for me and to make my team, he said, you're to be 24, 25. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? So he started talking about education. Now, I had some 90 to 100 scholarships around the country, but none in the Southwest Conference. Not even in the black schools. I didn't have any scholarship offers because I was too small. But he talked about education. And he says, and if you're lucky enough, maybe you play pro ball. Your life expectancy is 4 to 5 years. You're going 26, 27, 28. What are you going to do? And that, to me, was the thing that made the difference in my life. When a person wants to talk about education, and he wants to talk about what it's going to do for you, and education is one of the basic foundations that's going to level the playing field with everyone. And that was the biggest turning point in my life, that someone was that interested in me about education, because the majority of the coaches talked about how fast you ran the 100, how could you jump, and how many passes you caught, how many punt returns. But we strictly talked about the education, and we talked about character, and the things that a lot of people do not talk about these days with young people.
We're not going to spend a lot of time on football, but I know for those of you who might not have known a lot about Jerry, because he was recruited in 65 and played for SMU from 66 to 68, we've got a little highlight of a program that Fox Sports Net did a few years ago. And if we roll that, you'll get a little bit more flavor about Jerry LeVias.
We had been told that supposedly a sniper would be in the stands and he wanted to kill Jerry LeVias.
The letters would come through. A lot were one-way tickets back to Africa.
I didn't know there were so many rednecks still fighting the Civil War. It was just amazing that people could have that hatred for no reason at all.
In 1962, football coach Hayden Fry took a job at Southern Methodist University under one condition. He wanted to recruit a black athlete. In the fabric of the still very segregated South in the 60s, this wasn't a popular idea.
Well, growing up out in West Texas, a lot of my closest friends were black people. But every time we got on a bus, they had to sit in the back of the bus. By the time I got in the 8th and 9th grade, it dawned on me, this is not right. I made a commitment that if I ever got in a position where I could help my black friends, I was going to do it.
After much deliberation, SMU told Fry he could recruit one black athlete. The young coach knew he needed to make the perfect choice for the daunting journey that was about to begin.
We knew he couldn't be a failure. If he got in trouble, if he wasn't a good person, that would have closed the door for all the other fine black players. After 2 years of screening and searching athletes across the nation, one of my assistant coaches discovered Jerry LeVias. But we never realized how really difficult it was going to be once we got him.
On the first day of classes, the young man held up his hand in that class and asked a question. It says, "Is it true that colored brains are smaller than that of whites?" And I'm going, whoa, where did this come from?
LeVias would soon discover that Dallas in the 60s was a lonely place for a young black man. But it wasn't only the emotional pain that LeVias had to worry about. Before a game at Texas Christian, the SMU coaching staff received a call. There was a rumor that a sniper would be in the stands with one purpose, to kill Jerry LeVias.
Well, I had to tell the opposing team coaching staff also. Each time he lined up in the formation out wide, if it was anywhere near the opposing team sideline, all the coaching staff just scattered because they were afraid if the sniper shot and missed Jerry, it hit them.
I thought a lot of times about quitting. And I talked to my father. And my dad would always say, you make your bed, you sleep in it. I came to SMU to play football, and that's what I was going to do.
One particular game, Jerry was spit on and called some unmentionable names. And he came off the field, heartbroken. "Jerry, you're not going to let a guy like that whip you. We got a chance to win a championship. Don't let your teammates down." And he jumped up and started out on the field. And he turns around to me and he said, "Coach Fry," he said, "I'm going to run this punt back all the way." And lo and behold, he goes in. He runs the punt back 89 yards, and we win the ball game 21-14 and win the championship.
A lesser man may have been crushed under the weight of racism. Instead, fueled by courage and faith, Jerry LeVias persevered and helped change the face of college football.
On the football field, if you were good at what you do, you gained a lot of respect. I survived in racist times and a tough time in this country. And if I can do it, that a lot of people can do it.
Without question, it's the finest thing I did in 47 years of coaching football. To see how it turned out with Jerry and his life, what a winner, what a champion.